Good morning, grinders. How are you this morning? Today I am here with John Smith again. Welcome back. And Charlie.
Hello.
Welcome back to you too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, John, you had some stuff that you wanted to talk about before, or, just some topics you wanted to hit on, things maybe, I don't know, you felt like you missed out on from last time?
Oh, well, I didn't know we were going to jump right back into it, but...
well, I mean, we can do whatever.
I think there's always areas to explore in that realm.
Yeah.
Always looking at what masculinity means and what purpose it has, and does it, serve a purpose today,
Yeah, it seems to be a common recurring theme on this show.
Yeah.
Somehow we always end up in conversations about it.
Right.
We ask the big questions on this show.
Well, yeah, I mean, pretty much.
Yeah.
It is a man show, I suppose. I think the big thing is just, that it seems to me like it's things that people don't really talk about anymore. I mean, not that maybe they ever did before, like.
Yeah, I don't know if they. Well, I think they did.
Just not directly.
We have books from the early 1900s that really focus quite a bit on it.
True.
Quite a bit. And I wonder if you're busy living it, you don't need to talk about it or study it.
Very true.
But when we're in a part of the stage of civilizational decline in which it is disappearing or not as valued, people will tend to probably talk about it.
Probably.
And
I was just talking about stuff similar to this with my last guest, Mike, last week.
Yeah.
Somehow again we got in. Into talking about comfort and I think masturbation and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of boys today are just growing up without fathers, and so it tends to come up a little bit more often in everyday conversation, just with friends or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
It has become, and I think this might be something I was trying to get out with Mike that I just didn't get out quite right. But it seems like today's society has glamorized this, pimps and hoes kind of philosophy. Like it's so cool to just, bang chicks and then never call them again and all that. Mm-hmm. And women are kind of turning the same leaf too.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess I don't blame them, Yeah. If they feel used, why not use someone else?
Right. Right. And it's really interesting to, take a look at that philosophy and that ideology. And that is exactly what has happened in almost every single major civilization throughout the history of the world.
Right.
As each one has hit their zenith and then have hit the downhill side. And as that civilization continues to go down, it almost unravels at a faster and faster rate. And the common thing that allows it to unravel is the unraveling of the basic unit of each civilization, which is the family.
Yeah.
And whenever the family starts to unravel, civilization always follows. And
yeah, I think Mike referred to it as hoflation. Hoflation, yeah. Which I would attribute that as meaning, that women are just giving it away too easy anymore, which is true, but men also are not trying to have meaningful relationships either.
Therefore, right. So, yeah, we got some pretty big problems coming up on the horizon, But as Charlie said earlier, with the disintegration of the basic unit of society, there's more and more boys, young men being raised by mothers who they may be doing the very best they can, but they don't have any inkling of what it means to develop the masculine characteristics and aspects
Right.
of.
The masculine worldview kind of situation.
Right.
And so
Well-
I think it's important to recognize that masculine and man are not the same thing.
Right.
That an adult man is biologically male, but not necessarily masculine.
Yeah. Well, and something that I've heard you say several times, you can be really good at being a man, but that doesn't make you a good man.
Right. Or you can be a good man,
Yes. It goes both ways.
but it doesn't make you, that doesn't mean you're good at being a man.
Right.
And to quote John Wayne, it takes a man to be a good man.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the analogy, I guess you'd call it, of, that swing between the alpha and the beta.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I see it.
Yeah. Well, and I think Jordan Peterson talks about this, that,
Yeah.
if you don't have the capacity of being dangerous, well, then you're harmless, and you really don't have the capacity to do much of any good in this world because you're weak.
Yeah.
So you can be morally a good person, but if you don't have the ability to, take a stand, defend, protect, what good are you?
Yeah.
That's the definition of meekness, right? Power under control.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you know that, because most people view meekness as weakness.
Right.
And meekness is exactly that. Is in order to be a meek man, you need to be a powerful, strong, confident, capable man.
Right.
And then have the capacity to control that to the situation that you're in.
Apply pressure when it's needed, or back off when it's needed.
And be in full control of it.
Yeah.
Which is a very impressive thing to be able to do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. What was that saying? Great men are capable of horrible things with great power, yet keep themselves in control at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that is the principle of meekness right there. So when we're in men's group, or when I'm meeting with individuals, basically that's the principle that I'm trying to get across to men who are oftentimes emotionally overreactive, emotionally defensive, too focused on their own feelings.
Right.
They're
Overly sensitive. Constantly in their own head.
Yes. Worried.
Yeah.
Wondering if they're measuring up. And so again, that's what we're talking about. To become masculine is to constantly be tested so that you, through experience, know that you're capable.
Right.
I think last time I was here, I was talking about one of the keys to becoming more masculine is to stop avoiding discomfort.
Yeah.
I think another thing that we need to, focus on is accepting, embracing responsibility.
Start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
And being the most responsible person means you have to be uncomfortable most of the time.
Right.
I heard this several years ago, that the definition of being responsible, the most responsible person is the one who's capable of responding, which speaks to prowess, skill, knowledge, applying oneself.
Yeah.
So I think one of the primary principles that undergird, or that masculinity rests on, is responsibility. I bear the responsibility of providing and protecting, for others who are unable to do for themselves, which is why it's so important to be meek, because meekness carries with it a connotation that I'm doing this for the benefit of someone else, and I'm not going to use it as a fear tactic, as a control tactic. It's not an ego-driven thing.
Yeah.
I already am ultimately and completely comfortable with what I'm capable of doing. Mm-hmm. So I don't need your kudos, or I don't need your appreciation. And when I'm saying you, I'm speaking in terms of women, children,
right?
Yeah,
people.
Just
right?
anyone every day that comes into your life and whatever, and interacts with you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that responsibility. I like to think of it as accountability. I am accountable to my children. I'm accountable to, my significant other, whatever it is. As a man, I'm responsible. I'm also accountable.
Right. Because if I'm going to lead them through commanding respect rather than demanding it, I need to inspire trust. I need to behave and interact with them in such a way that they instinctively want to follow. And yes, that means I'm accountable to them, and that if they don't feel so inclined to follow because they're not inspired by my abilities, that's who's judging me, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, the same goes in any leadership role.
Yep.
That applies pretty much everything.
I'm kind of thinking just in the context of family, because I'm still in this,
right,
basic unit of society. But you're absolutely correct. It's in any situation in which there's a leader-follower dynamic. Anyone can lead through force and intimidation. You're not going to get the same results.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. To me, there's two people, because there's a lot of young men, young boys who can shave these days, who are grew up without a father or whatever, or maybe they had a father, but he wasn't he was kind of there, but he wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Jordan Peterson has become so popular and famous because there's a lot of young men looking for that inspiration. They're trying to figure that part out of them. But that's the same reason why Andrew Tate has become so popular. But they're two totally different worldviews. Andrew Tate's got that masculinity, Genghis Khan, I'm a conqueror, I'm going to will everything. I'm going to bend everything to my will, and I'm just going to become successful and all that. But that's not what a man is at all.
No.
Not even close.
No. I would agree with that.
What are you doing, Dave?
Nothing. I'm just adjusting mic levels over here. Don't mind me. Don't pay attention to me.
Okay.
So this, you're talking about fathers who may not be present. So there's a book written some time ago called Wild at Heart. It's written from a Christian perspective, but he does a great job, and I forget his name. I should know this, but he does a great job at describing this dynamic of young men being raised in homes. If fathers are there, they tend to fall into two categories. One in which the father is not accepting of the son and is overly critical, overly demeaning, isn't demonstrating, isn't modeling, isn't mentoring. He's just standing on the sideline criticizing. And then there's the other father who is there but isn't really present. He doesn't have a clear idea of what his purpose is.
He's showing up to the T-ball game, but he's not really watching.
Not really watching.
He's on his phone the whole time,
right,
texting his side chick or something.
And the boy is always asking, am I good enough? The first dad is going, you suck. No, you're not good enough. And the second one is going, I don't know, maybe, I guess.
Yeah. Or just oh, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Where that ideal father is one in which is understanding that his son isn't going to make it on his own. He has to be shown the way. And he's constantly putting him in situations in which the boy has to struggle and prove himself. But he's giving him encouragement along the way. Am I doing a good job, Dad? Keep on going, dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honest feedback, positive reinforcement.
Yeah, kind of basic stuff there, right? But when a young man does not receive that, he's constantly asking the question, am I good enough?
Mm-hmm.
When am I going to measure up? He's always playing scenarios in his head of different things of, can I do that? Am I capable of doing that? And then he's constantly being fed all these images and these tropes and, philosophies of what real men do. And quite frankly, most of that is just based in ego, stroking one's ego, or overcompensating rather than, and none of that is based in developing skills to become responsible. It's just massaging one's own ego, which makes you self-centered and narcissistic.
I was going to say insecure. Yeah, really.
Extremely insecure. So when anyone challenges you, your insecurity comes out in a very non-meek way.
Right.
And so you have to prove yourself, but you're proving yourself not in a traditional way, but just defending your insecurity.
Right.
So,
defending your own belief in yourself that is actually false.
Right.
Like it's false at heart.
Right. And
but
you're
you
afraid.
believe it to be true.
Well, you don't even believe it to be true because when someone is pointing it out.
Well, yeah, they're pulling the mask off and challenging your
Oh,
false
no, someone's going to find out. I better shut this down before they do.
Yeah.
Sort of approach.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like you're not even really, you are trying to prove to them that they're wrong, but you're also kind of trying to prove to yourself that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus the person who's already been there and done that.
Right.
Been through the war, so to speak, and someone's doing that, and you go, yeah. You believe what you want, dude.
Yeah.
And you can move on, and it's a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
They're a fly that's,
Right.
I don't need to prove anything to everyone.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you know it's BS anyway, why be mad about it?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Yep.
Move on.
Yep. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about this, and I don't know if I covered this last time or not. I don't know if I did, but the traditional, and when I say traditional, this model is found in almost every single culture throughout the world. This model of masculinity and how it's developed.
We might have touched on it, but I don't remember going. I mean, we touched on a lot of things, and I don't know if we went through it too hard, but
yeah. So the model of masculinity is almost identical in every single culture, but the methods by which it's implemented or reached, not. Typically, the more simple the culture, the society, the more straightforward the process.
yeah,
It's
like cannibals in New Guinea or something.
Right.
Basically,
Where
they put you in a loincloth and send you out into the desert for 5 weeks, and if you come back, you're a man.
Right. Something like that. But that's a simple society, very simple economics. There's not a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah.
And, they go through a simple rite of passage that proves specific qualities. And yes, they're endowed, if you will, they're pronounced, yes, now you are a man.
Which makes sense, though, because, I mean, if you look at how any society lives, right, then they need to know if they're testing your mettle against whether or not you're capable of living in that society and surviving.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it would make sense, especially depending on locale, what those tests would be, and what the moral fiber of that society is based on,
right?
What they hold to be valuable,
right? Well, so here's something interesting, and we may have talked about this last time in the book Manhood in the Making. They identify basically three primary purposes of men in all societies, and that's what the author did. is he went to all these different societies to see what they had in common in terms of masculinity or manhood. He was trying to determine whether it was a social construct or biological. And the reality is, with so many other things, it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's kind of both.
Yeah. So what he discovered was that there were 3 roles that every single culture put on men. That's providing, protecting, and procreating. I have added a 4th.
All right.
Because it's pretty clear, and that's presiding. I'm using the P. We've got 4 P's now. So I've added that one. So it's protecting, providing, presiding, procreating. So presiding, another word for leading.
Yeah.
Men have always been the de facto leaders in the family and in the community. Interestingly enough, there have been periods of time in which men are not the de facto leaders, and it's always in the ending times of civilization.
Yeah. Like the bonobos.
Right. Yeah. So with that, those 4 items, he was able to say, okay, these are probably cultural or societal expectations of men derived from biological differences, between them and women. So
right.
It's going to fall to them. And interestingly enough, if we look at all 4 of those roles, one of the most important qualities that undergird a person's ability to develop and excel, those is responsibility. You think of it this way. They go in order: protect, provide, preside, procreate. Meaning a man has to prove his ability in these first 3 areas before he earns the right to have children.
Yeah.
Right? That's a functional society in which a man has to prove his mettle to actually take responsibility for a family. He has to demonstrate the ability to protect, physically. He has to prove himself capable of going out and providing for the group.
Well, and what's interesting about that, and I don't want to interrupt you, but what's interesting to me about that is, men are more visual, right? So for us, I mean, an attraction, whatever you find attractive, whether it's butt, legs, hair, something has happened during your formative years or something that caught your eye that now becomes imprinted, and that's what you go for. You like big butts and you cannot lie. But I think, in terms of women, it's more of all of those things of, what does security mean? What does being provided for mean? So therein, I would think that a woman's attraction to men, and not just physical, would be more so driven by that society. Because as those things change, then through generation after generation after generation, wouldn't that also change the mindset of women and what they find attractive, right? Because if a man has to fulfill those 3 things before he's earned the right to procreate, so then if all of those things don't mean anything, right? Because we don't have to hunt anymore. We just go to the grocery store and get what we want. We have all these laws and seatbelts and everything else. We're so safe. We're the safest we've ever been. Right. So we don't have to worry about anything except maybe getting mugged and shot on the street while you're waiting to go to a concert. Big whoop, right? So then presiding, what do we have to preside over other than ourselves and our own family, which it doesn't seem like a lot of people are even doing anymore.
Right.
So therein, how does that societal shift change what women are attracted to and what they what they allow those 3 key things to be before they get the 4th?
I guess I don't quite understand what you're asking. Are you asking?
Well, it's not so much a question, I guess, as really just something I've been thinking about.
So when civilization occurs and when we're in the thick of it, the need for masculine qualities declines.
Yes.
Okay. So men, by the natural outcome of civilization becomes less and less vital.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the protecting and the providing and all that, what they are extremely vital for is utility. You know, the roads and the sewers and the electrical and all the things that men really make society work.
Yeah.
But these masculine qualities that we're talking about kind of fall out of favor. In fact, governments throughout the history of the world have also tried to decrease them as civilization progresses, because men always pose the threat to a tyrannical form of government.
Oh yeah, you got to be careful now, or you might be you might have some toxic masculinity going on.
Well, yeah. So even though these qualities and characteristics are no longer needed, I kind of joke around that as a man, I can sit at home all day, you know, watching Netflix and eating Cheetos, and I'm not in any threat of dying soon.
Right.
But if I tried that 10,000 years ago, I'd be dead pretty soon. I just wouldn't be able to survive.
Well,
the environment, right?
The other guys in the clan would probably kill you because you're useless.
Right.
Drag you out into the woods and stone you with rock.
And so if that's the case, then the question can be, well, what's the point of developing masculine qualities and characteristics?
Mm-hmm.
From the romantic side, in terms of what women desire, their brains have not changed at all over the course of the past 5,000-10,000 years. They still are highly attracted to masculine qualities and characteristics that demonstrate or show the potential for strength and courage and tenacity and, you know, all these things, all these qualities that can transfer into a good provider and a good protector. While at the same time, those are physical aspects, but women also want to be provided for emotionally and protected emotionally. And so men today, women are also valuing those beta traits for long-term relationships.
Yeah.
So I think that a man who's going to be able to have the happiest and healthiest relationships that he can have is going to be one who is able to balance, as we were talking about earlier, being good at being a man and being a good man. And
I guess I'm just wondering, the short version of my question was, why are women attracted to dudes with no job, no prospects, that just hang out all day playing Madden?
birth control. I'm serious. I'm serious.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm serious.
Great.
There's no consequences.
Yeah.
So, see, right now we're living in this wild, wild west, if you will, of sexual relations that is absolutely torpedoing our society into the ground, because there's no natural consequences for ineffective and destructive behavior.
Okay. Yeah.
So women are at their, they're able to have their cake and eat it too, if you will. They can go be, you know, they can go towards the guy who they have this very strong animalistic attraction to, knowing that they don't have to depend on him. But he's exhibiting all the traits.
And yet they still try. They still try to change and mold that guy to
yeah, because
something.
Hey, wouldn't it be awesome if I could tame the beast?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and come on, that's been around forever. That's Beauty and the Beast right there.
True.
That's the female fantasy. Is that top dog is going to love me and I'm going to change him into something safe.
Yeah.
Because essentially what women are attracted to is quite intimidating and scary at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that's actually too far off for guys either.
Oh yeah,
I mean, you know, the guy's ultimate fantasy is trying to turn the stripper into a housewife.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we all know that we've all dated women that we go, yeah, she's really, really beautiful, but that's going to be way too much work.
Yeah. Or
Meaning,
that's too dangerous.
Too dangerous, too much work. All the guys are going to, you know,
Yeah.
be attracted to her. And yeah. So I often joke that in marriage, we all settle. We settle for something that's safer, something that's more long-term, something that's more stable. Doesn't mean we don't love them. Doesn't mean they don't love us. But
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent there.
Well, and that I'd probably derailed you.
I honestly, personally, and I'm probably not even speaking for myself. I'm sure every guy has struggled with themselves. Like, am I a good man? You know, I think I understand the qualities that it takes, but am I actually walking that walk?
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, everybody's their own worst critic, but I've always found myself wanting or falling short, or at least thought of myself that way. I recently met a woman who seems to really inspire me to really want to be that man. Mm-hmm. And I've never met a woman that inspired that in me before. Like, I always kind of had like this moralistic, my own personal like view as to what I need to do, what I need to be responsible for. But this woman actually like sets my spirit on fire about it. And I don't know, I guess I'm just curious what your thoughts are like on that kind of reaction.
Yeah. That is very real, but I think we have to be careful because that's not going to last forever.
Right.
I think there's a reason why there's sayings that behind every great man, there's a great woman. And throughout history, men who have risen to these heights, it's typically because they have a wife who is seeing something in them that they don't see and that they are pushing them. And I think that is, I think for many women today, they really struggle understanding or realizing that they have that power within them to inspire men. So I agree with you that women do have that power to do that. But I also advise men to be careful about depending too much on that because it's not always going to be constant.
Right.
I think ideally, you know, we joke about this all the time that women marry men hoping that they'll change and men marry women hoping they don't. And the change that the women are hoping the man will make is maturity and development. I've asked this question to hundreds of women, and I get the exact same answer every time. And that is, if you had a choice between the 20-year-old version of your husband or the 50-year-old version, which one do you take? And without hesitating, without skipping a beat, every single one of them had said 50. We prefer the 50-year-old. And when I ask them why, they say, well, he's got more experience. He's more developed. He's the version of him that they were hoping he would be.
More fine-tuned.
He's more masculine.
Yeah.
Just takes 30 years worth of work.
And so a man who's depending on the woman for that to happen, you're kind of walking on thin ice. And that kind of brings us back to, now I'm bringing myself back to what I was originally trying to say. This philosophy, if you will, of masculine development has everything to do with having to reject the feminine first. Because if a boy does not reject the feminine, meaning primarily his mother, and what I mean by rejecting the mother, you're not rejecting her as a person or as your mother, but you're rejecting her as the one probably most powerful person in your life that will derail you.
The inspiration, maybe?
She's going to want you to be comfortable. She's going to want to nurture you. She's going to want to,
right. I just want you to be happy.
Right.
Well, yeah, the eventual leaving of the nest.
Right.
Because she's going to want you to stay in the nest.
She's going to want you to
because
stay.
She wants you to be safe, and she wants you to, grow old and be around forever.
And so there has to be a physical, well, first of all, there has to be a psychological individuation, separation, if you will, from your mother, recognizing I'm not like her, and therefore I have to separate in order for me to develop, who I am. Hopefully, there's a father available that you can turn to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the ideal.
Which unfortunately more and more there isn't.
Right. And that's why it's so important for there to be men who are in places to guide and mentor young boys. Problem, though, is with video games and iPhones and all these creature comforts of life. The path to masculinity is extremely hard, extremely difficult, extremely demanding. And it's so easy to just go back, fall back.
Turn on your Xbox and check out.
And it's going towards comfort. And that's what the feminine represents, is comfort. And so we have to reject the feminine in order to embrace the masculine. And the masculine is discomfort, it's sacrifice, it's pain, it's bloody, all for the purpose of being able to develop a mindset and skills that would allow you to be a provider and protector of the feminine without falling into the trap of seeking the feminine for comfort.
There's a podcast I listen to. One of the hosts likes to say, being a man is not a leisure concept.
It is absolutely not. Yes, I like that. I've never heard that before, but that is perfect. It is not a leisure concept at all. Yeah, it is a constant effort every single day, constantly overcoming the temptation to rest a little bit, to take it easy. I think the image of Sisyphus in Greek mythology pushing the rock up the mountain, that is the epitome of masculinity.
Yep.
And it's all for the purpose. And I've talked about purpose. It's really hard to develop this if I don't really know what my purpose is. But it's all for the purpose of being able to, again, return to the presence of the feminine, now in the context of a wife, in which I now will not depend on her for comfort, security, kissing my boo-boos, but I will be able to act as a provider and protector to both her and my offspring, never once giving into the temptation, if you will, of seeking her out as my, place of comfort.
Right.
So, do women have the power within them to inspire men? Absolutely. And I'm not going to reject being inspired by a woman, but I'm not going to breathe it in.
Right.
If you will. So, if there is a woman in your life that inspires you, that's amazing. That's awesome. But then you can take that inspiration and start owning it and recognizing, okay, if I'm going to reach my goals, it can't be because of an emotion.
Right.
It can't be because of a feeling. It feels good, but it's not going to last. So I have to start developing discipline.
Don't ride and rely on that feeling, but maybe use it as a trampoline or something to get going.
Yeah. I'm not saying you have to reject it.
No.
I'm just saying don't rely on it like
I don't
oxygen.
think I could reject it if I tried anyway, but I get what you're saying. I like it. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I feel manlier already.
Right?
Yeah, and that's always an interesting question when we're talking about this. Then guys are thinking, well, what do I do? Where do I start?
Yeah.
And I've created a list of masculine qualities and characteristics that it's not a comprehensive list, but it's certainly a very helpful list that if you were to focus on it, it'd get you a long ways. And I try to put it in order of importance. And at the top of my list is purpose. So if we want to break down all the different components of a human being, they're not separated from each other. They're all kind of enmeshed with each other. But there is the physical aspect, there is the mental aspect, there's the emotional aspect, there's the spiritual, and there's the social. And if I'm going to be the most masculine version of myself, I'm going to be working in all 5 areas. And I believe the most important one is spiritual. That's the part of us that gives us our purpose and meaning. So if I don't have an overall purpose and meaning for myself, everything else kind of just becomes an exercise in futility or meaninglessness. People who are going to the gym just to lift weights, I don't think are living as purposeful a life as those who go to the gym and lift weights because they're preparing for something, or they recognize that lifting weights enables them in doing something that's of a higher purpose.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, there's, think there's a big difference in doing it just for your health and having an end goal, like you're training for a marathon or,
Right.
You want to be a, bodybuilder or something.
So to get a little bit personal here, my purpose right now that gives me a masculine purpose is the fact that most of my children are out of the house, and I have grandchildren who are coming into the world. And I see the world going in a direction that is not friendly to a cohesive family system. They just don't happen.
Yeah.
And so if I want my family to be protected from the effects of a disintegrating society, I need to be taking these ideas and these philosophies and ideologies and start putting them into practice, in which I am the patriarch, if you will, of this growing family. Most of my children are girls, and so those joining the family are going to be men.
Yeah. So you're thereby leading the family and the other men joining it by example.
Right.
Yeah.
And so leading by example and having an overall purpose or an idea of what I'm trying to do gives me all kinds of motivation to do what I'm doing now. And so that's the number one thing, purpose. And I tell guys all the time, you need to find a reason for living. Otherwise, all you're going to do is exist.
Yeah. Well, and I think we should be clear that reason for living I don't think it should just be about a family or a woman.
I don't think it should. Well, so this is where we kind of disagree, because throughout history, masculinity has always been about protecting family. Even though modern day commentators on masculinity say, that's not really the case.
Well, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be involved, but I don't think it should be the only reason.
I don't think it has to be the only reason.
Yeah.
But I do know for me, that's my primary reason. And it's masculinity that keeps civilization going, primarily through the protecting of the family unit and ensuring that stays intact. So that's where that
makes sense.
Where I'm coming from in terms of my personal situation. And so when I think of providing, I'm thinking of providing not only in terms of physical things, but also providing knowledge, providing support, providing insight, providing perspective, providing emotional, support, all those things.
Yeah. Not just a paycheck.
Right. Protecting. I'm not just protecting them from physical danger. I'm protecting them from destructive ideologies that are going to try to convince them that the truth is not the truth, something that's false. Protect them from these ideologies that cause them to turn inward and be selfish and self-serving. Because that's how societies die as well. Everyone becomes so focused on themselves, they don't have the capacity to give a rip about anything or anyone else.
Yeah. Me.
Right. I need to provide this structure within the family in which there's cohesion. So I'm communicating with them and giving them instruction and direction. Also recognizing that as my daughters marry and have children, those are their families, and so I can't interfere, but I act as a source of inspiration.
Right.
In which their husbands are turning to me and saying, hey, what do you think of this? Or, So how am I going to do that? So I have got my purpose. What is the most important thing that I need to have in place in order to do that? I need to have a brotherhood. I need to have like-minded men in my, corner who support me, who agree with me, who I can inspire, who they're thinking of doing the same things. Because without that brotherhood, it's me leading this band, this family, and it's just me.
Yeah.
And as one who has attended a men's group for years, you recognize the value and the power of getting your batteries charged.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't do it alone, and you shouldn't do it alone. I mean, it's one thing if you're the only man on the island.
Right.
But you're not.
Right. And so if I'm not seeking brotherhood, I'm not surrounding myself by other men who are going to make me better.
Yeah.
It'll be easy for me to just skate by.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not doing my family any favors.
Yeah, you don't have anyone that is holding you accountable to being a man.
Yep.
Because really your family can't do that, I don't think.
So there's brotherhood, and we would add to that honor. And, you know, in the way of men, Jack Donovan speaks of honor as me being concerned about my reputation with other men.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that part.
Yeah. And so I need to have that. I'm constantly honing my blade, if you will. I'm constantly being sharpened by other men as I'm sharpening them.
I've never heard that definition of honor before. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that you hear people, I don't care what anyone thinks. Yeah.
You should.
You should.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why you're putz, dude. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe not the whole of society, but you should definitely care what men who are of a higher caliber than yourself think of you.
At least your peers, right?
Well,
At the very least, your
and
peers,
as my dad used to say, show me your friends and I'll show you your destiny. So in this brotherhood, I need to be very, very careful and very discriminatory, if you will, of whom I am allowing in or whom I am choosing to associate myself with.
Yeah. Well,
otherwise,
if you ought to be successful, surround yourself with successful people. Yeah.
Oh, damn. I guess I'm dragging you down, Dave. My bad.
Yeah. Why can't we just cancel you?
And so the next area that I think is important to develop, which comes from being surrounded by good quality men, is toughness and grit. So that's a mental. So the first one's spiritual, second one's social. The third item, the third quality, toughness and grit, is a mental piece. My ability to take on responsibility means I'm going to be uncomfortable quite a bit. And I'm going to experience things in which challenges are constantly presenting themselves, and I'm constantly overcoming them. Interestingly enough, I used to wonder why we didn't have a rite of passage type kind of system set up for us like the tribes in, New Guinea do.
Yeah.
And what has been shown to me is that there's no Western country, starting with ancient Greece, that had a rite of passage, but that in Western countries, it has always been this idea that manhood is attained by facing constant challenges and overcoming them. So if you look at different Greek stories and mythologies, you see a pattern developing in which they are given tasks to prove themselves. So we see Hercules, we see, who's the other one? Ulysses. Odysseus, yeah.
Achilles, Hercules, all of them, yeah. Perseus was a big one. Yep.
So you see this pattern, okay, if I'm going to prove myself, I have to go on a quest. And in this quest, I'm being developed into something that I wasn't before. And I'm going to be developed by a constant, okay, I overcame that one. Now the next one's coming up. And maybe I learned something from that first challenge that is now enabling me to overcome this next one. So the idea of developing mental toughness and grit is extremely important, because, as you said, it's not a
leisure concept.
It's not a leisure concept. And with toughness and grit being more of a mental piece, whatever the mind commits itself to do, the body will follow until the body just can't do it. But we all know that it's mental toughness that determines physical toughness. And we're most likely to develop that by surrounding ourselves with men who are high quality, high caliber, who are also tough mentally and physically.
Other men to push you. I know. When I was going through basic training, that was a big thing. We were always pushing each other, always competing with each other just to better ourselves.
And there's this synergy that's developed from that.
Yeah.
And from that, there's a bond that's created. A bond that is actually stronger than any other type of bond a man will have. So that goes back to, the woman who inspires you.
Yeah.
The strength of a bond that a man has with another man can and often does eclipse their ability to bond with their own wives and children.
How do you mean?
They have something in common that connects them that they can never share with their wives or children or other men that were not in the same experience.
Yeah.
There are just things that you can talk to guys about that you shouldn't be talking to with your woman or children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's often said that men bond through experience, through shared experience, and that the more dangerous, the more difficult the experience, the stronger the bond.
Yeah. I don't even remember where I heard it, but something like your wife or whoever, your girlfriend is constantly like, talk to me, tell me what's going on, tell me what's wrong. And they want to hear it. But as soon as you tell them, something shifts in their brain and they just lose a little bit of respect for you.
Yep. And I will suggest that while they say that, they really don't want it. What they want is reassurance that you're okay so that they're okay.
Yeah.
Often also
Interesting.
I think, women, they perceive reality through the lens of emotion.
Yes.
And so when they're with a man, they want to feel something. And I think it's to a man's credit who's able to emote and who's able to meet a woman where she's at emotionally without getting sucked into it.
Right.
But by doing that, she's able to experience an emotion that she attributes to you as a man. But a man who is now going to bare his soul and his feelings and all that, you're right. I've had many conversations with many women who it wasn't until after the fact they go, oh. Yeah.
I actually didn't want to know that.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a couple that I worked with years ago in which, he was a man's man, tall, athletic, ruggedly handsome.
The most interesting man on earth.
Yeah. Outdoorsman. His wife, extremely beautiful. They perfect match. But this guy, he didn't emote much. He was quite stoic. And there was one session in which he was lamenting that he didn't show enough emotion. I just wish he'd show more emotion. And she caught herself. She goes, maybe not. I think if he was more emotional, I wouldn't be as attracted to him. I just laughed because exactly.
She kind of figured it out herself.
I thought, wow, kudos to you for that self-awareness.
Yeah.
But so I think it's good for men to be able to validate emotions and recognize emotions without themselves reacting emotionally. That actually sends the message, sends the signal to the woman that you are connected to her emotionally. And that's what they want.
Right.
They don't want you to be emotional. They just want you to be able to understand theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fair to say, have feelings.
Absolutely.
And be able to express them, but not to be reactive to them and get emotional.
Right. And don't expect and don't bear emotions. Well, let me back up and clarify. I'm okay with guys being emotional as long as they are in control of their emotions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as long as they are not expressing them with an unspoken expectation that their wife is going to understand them
Right.
or validate them.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think there's a big difference between, just giving your wife a heads up, like, yeah, I kind of woke up on the wrong side of the bed today.
Yep.
Just not feeling it.
Yeah.
And then moving along.
Right.
Versus being an asshole all day and, talking down to her and just being a jerk.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's just being a child.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's not attractive.
Not attractive. And this is also not attractive. Oh, I'm having a bad day today. I'm just not feeling it. Will you kiss my boo-boo?
Yeah, exactly.
Please
Yeah.
feel for me.
Right.
No, it's like, I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling
So
just
that you're
you
aware.
recognize, just so you're aware, so
Right.
you can
Do with that information what
navigate
you will. Yeah.
me today as you will. But now I'm going to go on and do my thing.
Yeah. But I'm going to go, mow the yard with the same smile on my face that I do every Friday.
Yeah. The next item after toughness and grit is discipline. And I find that discipline is also a mental toughness piece. And so you might say discipline is a byproduct of toughness and grit.
I was going to say, when you were talking about toughness and grit mentally, I was thinking discipline. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with toughness and grit, it's just I'm capable of doing hard things and getting through them, where discipline is I'm capable of disciplining behavior without someone else inspiring me or bribing me or shaming me,
Right.
or whatever the case may be. It's no one's around. It's time to get up. Time to,
Acting accordingly of your own free will.
right.
What I would think that toughness also falls into controlling your emotion and being stoic and all that stuff too.
Well, I've got that a couple of things down, a couple of spots down, but I could see where
You know what I mean? Like I would think, it's like the jokes about, the old guy that, that got some weird growth hanging off of his finger and, instead of getting all pissy and weirded out about it, he just clips it off with a pocket knife and
right.
keeps on working, puts a Band-Aid on.
Yeah. With discipline comes strength and physical prowess. So I'm kind of jumping ahead, but going back to discipline. So discipline is disciplining myself in all 5 areas. So I'm spiritually disciplined. I'm mentally disciplined. I'm emotionally disciplined. I'm socially disciplined.
Kung Fu master of being a man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's mental, but it can also go into I'm physically disciplined, and but to be disciplined is more the mind, right? I think being emotionally disciplined is also, and I guess that would go back to stoicism and being emotionally resilient. That is the epitome of manhood. Otherwise, I'm acting like a child, like a boy.
Right.
I've had several women talk to me. It was really, really fascinating, but it makes perfect sense how women have this really reactionary reaction to men who are defensive, emotionally reactive. And I've always thought of it in terms of, well, he's acting like a boy. So either a small child or a teenager, the one who acts like he got his hand caught in the cookie jar. I'm sorry, that's more like the boy getting in trouble with his mom. And then me reacting, I can eat whatever I want. I paid for this, that's the teenager.
Yeah.
But so that's the way I've always looked at it. But I've had many women express something different, which I find to be fascinating, is that it's not, they don't necessarily see it as being a child, but they almost view it as being womanly. Oh, this is how my girlfriend would react. Which is a very confusing experience for them. And one of the reasons why they're turned off by it is that it's not masculine. It's oh, that's kind of how I'd act.
Why are you acting like my sister right now?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So being able to discipline ourselves and embrace the idea of being disciplined, because again, all of these qualities and characteristics fly in the face of the current society that we live in today.
It's not comfortable.
Yeah, very much so.
Right.
Yeah, being disciplined is not easy. It's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything that's surrounding us is inviting us to be comfortable.
Yep.
And to avoid pain and suffering. So from the toughness and grit and discipline, we develop these mental qualities that then allow us to develop physical qualities. I used to tell guys to focus on the physical first, but I really truly believe that if I'm going to be successful in developing physical strength and physical prowess, I've got to have a really good reason for doing it, and developing a mind that allows me to experience the pain and deal with the pain that comes from developing physical strength and physical prowess. While at the same time, any neuroscientist worth their salt will tell you that as the body goes, so goes the brain. So it's kind of this chicken or the egg kind of thing. So the stronger the mind, the more capable I am at developing a very strong body. However, the stronger the body, the stronger the mind will be. They play off of each other.
Well, working out releases those chemicals and stuff in your brain, the dopamine and the serotonin and all that stuff. And
So it's,
fights off depression.
So as a mental health professional, I have on my whiteboard areas that people, if they want to have good mental health, they need to focus on. The first one, and I've got the first three in order of importance. The first one is sleep. Second one is nutrition. And then the third is exercise. Without sleep and proper nutrition, the exercise that you do doesn't do anything, right? But the reason why I have that on my board for people who are coming to see me for depression and anxiety is I recognize that just by someone incorporating these three things into their life, many of those symptoms that they come presenting with are going to greatly decrease or completely disappear. And I've seen it many, many times. And so to be mentally strong, to be mentally healthy, truly mentally strong and mentally healthy, you really need to be physically strong and physically healthy. And I put physical prowess on there instead of just physical strength, because I think prowess speaks to not only can I lift heavy things, which is a very masculine thing to do, but I'm able to do things with my body that I otherwise wouldn't be able to do without practice and without training.
so you're kind of looking at like the entire trifecta: stamina,
Hey, having great sex is a thing. I'm just saying.
Strength, power, endurance, flexibility.
Yeah.
I can move in the environment with ease.
Yeah.
It's like
You
athleticism.
can glide through instead of just, barely being able to move your limbs and cracking.
Right. Because yes, it's good to be strong, but to be able to be of service in all areas is being responsible. Right. So, and if we think of the basic providing and protecting, those are typically very physical in nature. And if you look at the silhouette of the male body, with the female, it's the hourglass, where with the male, it's typically the wide shoulders, narrow hips,
More of a triangle. Yeah.
more of a triangle, which speaks to, well, what is that body designed to do? Well, that body's designed to fight, to defend, to kill, if you will. Not murder necessarily, but,
Triangle's a predator.
yeah. And then from strength and physical prowess, courage. And I guess we could say courage is a form of mental strength. It's a form of discipline. It's a form of toughness and grit. But there's also moral courage, which I think in many ways might be more difficult than just the physical courage. That standing up for something you believe in the face of great opposition. because human beings are social animals. We want to be comfortable. We want to be accepted. We want to have friends, so that's just one aspect of courage. But I also think in terms of leading a family or the relationship with a woman, happy wife, happy life, that I think is an outpouring of cowardice, not being able to stand up for correct principles, but just going along to get along. That is one of the single biggest contributors to marriages, destructing, is that the man took the tactic of appeasing.
Well, yeah, the happy wife, happy life BS.
Right. And I could see where, it's a perversion, if you will, of the self-sacrificing aspect, but I'm self-sacrificing for the betterment of my family.
Right.
Not just to appease my wife to make her happy. I mean, what happens to our children when all we do is appease them to make them happy?
They turn into friggin' brats.
Right. They become self-entitled, horrible people to be around. That's what happens to anyone, men and women, who are appeased, who get away with behavior that otherwise wouldn't be acceptable.
Yeah.
And so being able to take a stand, and it doesn't have to be in a rude, condescending, controlling way, but it's just, hey, no, that's not okay.
Yeah. That's just, putting your foot down and not necessarily explaining yourself, but, hey, just so you know, I'm not okay with what you're doing.
Right. It's interesting. I've had many women say this, and it's great doing what I do because I hear so many things that from women who will never admit this to their husbands. But there's two phrases that I've heard many times over the years, and that is, I need him to be my rock, and sometimes I need to be put in my place.
Well, and no woman wants to know that she can just steamroll over the man that she's with.
Absolutely.
Because if she can, then anybody can.
Then anyone can. And now she doesn't feel safe and secure. It's the exact same thing that happens to children who can steamroll their parents. They're happy in the moment because they got their way.
Right.
They're selfish. They're egocentric. I got what I wanted.
But now they're not going to listen to you ever because they know they don't have to.
Right. Now they don't have to. But now that leaves them in this place of, oh crap, who's
in charge?
Who's in charge?
Yeah.
I want dad to be in charge.
Yeah. The captain's asleep at the wheel. Where's this going?
Yeah. So it's the same sort of thing with women. Is if I allow my wife to treat me poorly, to get away with behavior that otherwise would not be acceptable any other place, the message that I'm sending her is I'm okay with her emotionally, verbally abusing me, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm okay with, her not progressing as a human being. I'm okay with her just settling. Is that love? Does that mean I really love you? Or is it just that I don't want conflict? So,
yeah, I learned that one the hard way.
So then after courage comes responsibility and self-sacrifice. When I'm able to do all of these things, the natural outpouring is I'm more responsible in many different areas, and I'm capable of sacrificing myself for the betterment of the group. I've developed, a brotherhood. I've developed toughness and grit. I've developed discipline, physical prowess. I'm brave. I'm able to face fears. And I'm doing all of this not for my own sake, but I'm doing this for the benefit of my wife and my children and my community and my tribe, if you will. Everyone benefits.
Yeah.
And that is, to go back to what I was talking about earlier, in every single culture in the entire world, the roles that men play are for the purpose of benefiting the whole at their expense. And that's why the path of masculinity is so difficult, is we have to get comfortable with the idea that we're going to die.
Yeah.
We're willing to sacrifice ourselves for the betterment of the group. And every culture, every single culture on the face of the earth has had that philosophy, if you will, of masculinity. And so Andrew Tate and many others today, their version of masculinity is self.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this for my gain, for my betterment, at the expense of others. It's the survival of the fittest, if you will.
Yeah.
So that is a philosophy that is tempting, if you will, to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Especially MGTOW. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
It sounds familiar, but
That acronym, men going their own way. They're the male feminists. The male version of feminists, in which they've been hurt by women, they've been burned by women, so they
a lot of men are going that route.
So they joined the He-Man Woman Haters Club, so to speak.
Yep.
And instead of taking a look at themselves, they just blame
Women, society.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus going along the lines of masculinity and saying, well, I recognize that this is going to be, I may not live long enough to see the benefits of what I'm trying to do, but that's not the point. I'm establishing a path that is going to require courage and toughness and grit, no matter how anyone responds to it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of, I think it's a Chinese proverb, something about wise men plant trees in whose shade they will never sit. Something like that. I'm always looking to the future. That's the masculine approach. I'm always looking at what legacy am I leaving behind for future generations. So that's the self-sacrifice piece. And again, we see that in nature. We recognize that men are the expendable sex, because one man can father 10 children in a year, where,
a woman can only mother one.
One, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So women do have more value in a society that wants to perpetuate itself.
Right.
And that's been the case from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't view that as being a bad thing. I view it as being biologically and psychologically correct behavior. But that doesn't mean that I have to take on this martyr role either. I just recognize that everything that I'm doing is going to be for the betterment of my society as a whole, or my family. And you remember right at the beginning when we're talking about purpose, I find my greatest sense of purpose right now is in the protecting of my family, which I am going to have to be uncomfortable, and I will have to sacrifice things that I would rather be doing for their betterment. And I am proud to do so. After that, I have stoicism and emotional resilience, which I think can go along with discipline and toughness. But this is more than just putting on a strong front. No, this is something that has to be deep at your core.
Yeah, it has to be genuine.
Right.
If it's not genuine, then it's not real. And if it's not real, then you're just, you're holding up a...
And so that's why I added emotional resilience to the stoicism, because stoicism can often just be seen as a
blank slate.
This is what's on the outside.
Yeah.
But if what's on the outside is truly coming from what's on the inside, well, then it's genuine. Mm-hmm. It's congruent.
Right.
And emotional resilience comes from experience with difficulties. And the more difficulties, the more challenges I face, the more comfortable I become with difficulties and ambiguities and ironies. I'm not expecting everything to work all the time. So I'm not throwing a tantrum when my internet doesn't work anymore, or,
Some of the most stoic guys I've ever met in my life, whenever they would come across like a tough situation or something like that, it wasn't necessarily just like that blank stare.
Right.
It was usually kind of like, well, this is what we're doing. And then they make a joke about it and kind of laugh. And then here we go.
There's in psychology, there is a principle called radical acceptance. And radical acceptance is this idea that I'm going to accept reality as it comes to me. And I'm not going to waste any emotional energy on anything that I don't have any power to change.
Right.
And that is almost exactly what the Stoics were preaching back in the day as well.
Right.
You have very limited ability to control so many things. And so anything that you can't control, let it be. Let it go. Don't waste any mental or emotional energy on it.
Yeah.
And just like any other practice or skill, the more one practices this sort of thing, the better they get at it. All of this, everything that we're talking about here is about practice. But one of the other aspects that I want to go back to is this idea of constantly putting myself in situations in which I'm uncomfortable, in which I am conditioning my brain to the reality that it can overcome difficult things, and overcoming difficult things is normal. There's a documentary that I may have talked about in the last time I was here, but I talk about it quite a bit. It's called Happy People.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you did bring that up last time. I actually just watched that recently.
Oh, so you did watch it?
Yeah, I rewatched it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you remember that scene of that guy coming into his cabin here? So this documentary is about fur trappers, people who live in Siberia.
Yeah, a year in the taiga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have these trapping areas that they're given by the government on lease or whatever that comprise thousands of square miles.
Yeah.
I mean, huge tracts of land, and they go from their village, and sometimes they have to travel 200 miles just to get to the area in which they're going to trap. And they're doing this in winter. There's in Siberia, there's no roads.
It's like 30, 40 below the entire time.
Some guys are having to snowmobile through their areas. Some guys are having to
Dog sled.
Anyway, there's a scene in which, and they also show, like, during the summer months, they're going out to these areas and building cabins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
certain distances away from each other.
I think the whole thing is split up into 4 chunks.
Yep.
So you have springtime,
spring,
summer, fall, and winter.
Right.
So it's like a docu-series, or?
It's one whole thing, and I think it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours long, but yeah.
Oh,
They just have it segmented that way.
But you can go into YouTube and get separate films for each season that are about an hour long.
Oh, okay.
So it's a greatly expanded version.
So you could make it a docu-series on YouTube, basically.
Yeah, you can.
So they build these cabins that are situated certain distances from each other, so that when they're out trapping, they're running their trap lines, and when they're done for the day, they're at their cabin.
They got shelter.
You're right. Well, there's this scene where this trapper comes into the clearing where his cabin is, and a tree has fallen on it.
Oh, no.
Destroying his roof. His chimney, metal chimney is off kilter, and a bear has gotten into his cabin. And his reaction is nothing.
Yeah. He doesn't react to it at all. It's like it's a typical Saturday evening for the guy.
It's like he was expecting it to happen. Yeah, there it is. And wasting no energy, mental or physical, just gets right to work. What's the first thing he does? Gets a saw and starts sawing up the tree.
Yep.
That's the first thing you need to do. Get it off the roof. No wasted energy, no wasted emotion. Just get to work. This is in the middle of Siberia, in the middle of winter.
And the kicker is, though, that the roof is still damaged, so he can't stay there. So he gets the tree off, and he fixes his chimney as best he can, and he fixes the window that the bear tore through.
Yep.
But then that's it. So he heated up some water on the stove and made himself some tea, some soup or something.
Yeah. So he could then go on to the next cabin.
Yeah. Who knows how many miles.
Something warm to eat or drink on the way there. Yeah.
But it's dark. Mm-hmm. He's doing it at night,
Yeah.
So
he was expecting to be bedded down at that place for the night. And now it's like, I guess I'm going to the next one.
So I talk to men about, that's a fantastic film to watch if you want to see what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about masculinity, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And these guys, when they're at home, There's no machismo. There's no trying to prove anything. They're completely at home and at ease with themselves.
Well, I think they fish in the summertime too.
Yep.
So yeah, they're, the fellas are all out on the boat every day, fishing and stuff like that. But then every night they're at home with their families, and it's just normal everyday dudes.
And so you see these guys who are stoic and emotionally resilient because they can't afford to be overreacting all the time because they're constantly.
Or what good does it do?
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't do any good.
Right. And who would want to work with them?
Right.
What kind of confidence would that inspire?
Right.
Not so much. The ninth piece on the list is mastery and skills. So that's more in terms of the mental, intellectual aspect of things, where I recognize that as a man, that self-sacrificing aspect, there has to be some utility to what I do. I need to provide something to the community that is of worth. And the more I can do, the greater utility I have, the greater value I bring. And so I think part of being masculine is recognizing that I need to be learning things. I need to be applying myself to learning and developing, skills, abilities. Now can I change the oil in the car? Can I change my tire? Can I, change out, transmission? Can I, change out an outlet in the wall? Can I fix my washer?
Yeah.
On and on and on, right?
That is something that I have personally always struggled with. And I always blamed it on, I didn't have anybody to teach me how to do that stuff.
Right.
But just in the last couple of years, recently, I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to try it. I'm just going to do it. And it's surprisingly easy and fulfilling when I do complete it.
Yep. And you'll probably recognize that the more you do that, the more confidence you have in yourself.
Exactly.
And so confidence.
Now I want to fix more stuff. Now I'm like, what's going to break next?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the biggest thing too is, I've talked before about how we have this wealth of knowledge in our pockets that we carry around with us, the encyclopedia of the planet, if you will, and nobody ever uses it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use it, that's one of the greatest things to use it for. YouTube is such a great place to learn how to fix stuff.
Absolutely.
And 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you what not to do because they've already screwed it up once.
Yeah, the other week I was telling guys that I believe that technology, phones, iPads, are probably the biggest detriment to a man being able to develop himself in all of these areas. And that's only if he doesn't master the ability to use it as a tool in an intentional way. Otherwise, it's going to master him.
Right.
So I'm not against, smartphones.
Yeah.
If we use them responsibly, there's that word again, with intention and purpose, I can bend it to my will.
Right. Using it, as you said, with intent and being responsible and resisting the urge to open Facebook every 10 seconds.
Right. And if I'm on YouTube, I'm not there to watch cat videos. I'm there to gain a skill. I'm there to, how do I do this? Okay, got it. Let's do this.
Ford F-150. Why does my engine tick even though it only has 150 miles on it?
I had a conversation with my ex.
Not that I've ever searched that.
Conversation with my ex recently. She's wanting to cut the kids off from internet completely. And I'm like, listen, when they're under your roof, you do what you want to. But when they're under my roof, the internet is like a firearm. And I'm going to teach them how to use it responsibly. Otherwise,
So that goes into both protecting and providing.
Right.
I'm protecting them from their impulsive proclivities with a very powerful dopamine delivery system. I'm going to protect them, but I'm also going to provide them with experiences and knowledge to help them make choices and teach them how to discipline themselves with a very powerful tool,
Yeah.
right? Much like we'll do the same thing with firearms,
Yeah.
or
Any tool,
drills,
really. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then the last thing is provisioning and prosperity. My ability to provide is going to be greatly enhanced by all those other things. I put all those things into practice that then comes out in my ability to provide not just, physical, temporal things, but knowledge and skills and
Yeah.
information and wisdom and perspective. So,
Well, and I remember too, when I was a kid and, rebuilding engines with my friend's grandpa and stuff like that, I thought that guy was the awesomest dude on the planet because he knew stuff.
yeah.
So if you put in practice and the effort to actually learn how to do stuff yourself and not just take it into the shop every time something goes wrong and the light comes on, I think that's a huge thing for your kids.
Yeah.
To be able to see that you can handle that and you have that knowledge that you can pass down.
Yep.
So long as you can tear them away from the video games.
That's where courage comes in.
Yep.
But then again, if you just don't buy them to begin with, you don't have a problem.
Right.
Well, I got to get going to work.
I know, right?
Working overnights this week.
Fun.
That was nearly 2.5 hours.
It was.
Yeah, well, and we're at about an hour and 40 minutes of recording time, so
Good talk.
yeah.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. John,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
That's good to have you back.
Sure.
Alrighty. Well, I guess on that note, we will sign off here. Everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us on this episode again with John Smith and Charlie this time. Everybody have a great week, and all you grinders out there, keep on grinding. Appreciate you. Bye, everybody.